Welcome to our show In Conversation. Today we have with us Shri Deepak Shetty. He is the Director General of Shipping, ex-Officio Additional Secretary to the Government of India. Welcome to our show, sir.
Thank you very much.
I would like to give a very brief introduction. Shri Deepak Shetty is a direct recruit member of the 1980 batch of the Indian Revenue Service. He has over 34 years of first-hand civil service experience at various Group A, Class 1 level in the Government of India. He is the recipient of several official decorations in his service career. The list is very long. So here we would like to particularly mention that Shri Deepak Shetty, he is recipient of Presidential Award of Appreciation Certificate for Specially Distinguished Record of Service, bestowed on him in 2002 on the Republic Day. This is the highest formal award granted by the Ministry of Finance, Government of India, to its civil servant. Welcome to our show, sir.
Thank you, Capt Virendra Mishra, to you in particular and to the Shipping Tribune in general. Thank you for this very kind invite extended to me to share some of my perspectives. And it's very humbling that you introduced me. So it's a pleasure and privilege on my part to be associated with this program today.
Thank you, sir. Sir, there are a few questions actually which we have been going around in the industry and seeking the feedback from various professionals in the industry, and I would like to have your opinions on that, sir. And to start with, there has been a demand for income tax relief from the Indian seafarers sailing on Indian ships. Could you please update us on that, sir?
This has been a demand which has been articulated by the shipping industry and the seafarers of Indian Indian origin for the last 2 decades or so. And their various efforts have been made institutionally as well as at collective levels. It is only now, very recently, that these efforts have borne fruit. And in terms of a recent notification issued on the 17th of August 2015, the Central Board of Direct Taxes under the Department of Revenue of the Ministry of Finance, Government of India, has issued a notification in the Gazette of India in terms of which income tax relief stands afforded finally. If I may just amplify that, what this notification indicates is that through an amendment to the income tax rules of 1962, any individual being a citizen of India and also a crew of a ship, he is eligible for an income tax relief which is computed in terms of the entries made in the CDC of the seafarer, and where the eligible voyage is defined, and the eligible voyage is indeed spelt out to mean that a voyage which is originated from any port of India and which has its destination in any foreign port, or correspondingly a voyage which has begun in a foreign port and culminates as its destination in an Indian port of call. So let's say for a non-resident Indian seafarer,
Yes, sir.
the leg that is covered in the coastal operations within the country, as long as it is subsumed within the overall voyage leading up to an international leg, that gets now computed for benefit of income tax calculation purposes. Now, this was a relief which was granted retrospectively from the fiscal 2014-15, which is the assessment year, income tax assessment year 14-15.
Yes, sir.
And returns were due to be filed under the Income Tax Act by the 31st of August 2015. However, I understand that through media reports that period, the grace period has been extended, and now I believe by about the first week of this month, they need to file the returns to claim and be eligible for this benefit.
Yes, sir. Here there is some confusion about actually the vessels which are engaged only on the Indian coastal operations, sir. Could you please clarify that, sir?
I think there is clarity of thought as far as the government is concerned. The move was very clearly for those Indian seafarers who were traveling on an international voyage by virtue of them being non-resident Indians. So primarily that is the desiderata, the critical criteria is the non-resident Indian. To the best of my knowledge, neither has any demand been articulated as yet, nor is there any move to extend this for pure coastal operations, which is to say for vessels and seafarers who are engaged solely in operations within the Indian coastline.
Right, sir. Thank you very much for this clarification, sir.
Yep.
Sir, the another actually issue which is being discussed right now is about the unemployment of junior officers and particularly the deck cadets and junior engineers. We know, sir, there have been some initiatives taken by the government, but we would like to hear from you, sir.
This indeed is a matter of concern across all quarters. There is no getting away from the harsh reality that there has been a significant backlog of trainees for their structured shipboard training, without which they have not been able to move on to get into their first level of competency, certificate of competency examinations. For instance, as you rightly said, the largest chunk of those who are still in the pipeline to finish their sea time and then qualify for their COCs, the first level of COCs, are the deck cadets on the nautical side, primarily the DNS cadets. Well, this has been a legacy issue. The problem has got aggravated over a period of time in terms of the sheer number of institutes that got set up over a period, the number of programs, and that's on the one hand. And then the fact that there has been a slump in the shipping industry, impacted adversely by the global recession post 2008. So the number of vessels have not correspondingly risen. So as a result, the number of slots which are available on board or on board ship berths, they have not correspondingly gone up exponentially to the extent of the number of cadets who are emerging from maritime training institutes. The numbers are, I think, debatable as to how many these are, because there are no firm definitive figures on these, because what has happened is it's quite possible that a lot of them have moved on in life over a period of time. They probably have gone on to look at other greener pastures, other professions, other vocations. It's unlikely that a lot of them have stayed on to continue to aspire for this. But that said, this is indeed a matter of serious distress. The Government of India, in cognizance of this ground reality, has initiated a program sometime in the month of March this year, where a combination of grant of up to 3 lakh, 30% or 3 lakh, whichever is lower, would be extended to any cadet or an engineer trainee who wishes to complete his or her structured seaboard time, supplemented by an avenue being opened for them to avail of a loan from a financial institution or a bank, a scheduled bank. So this scheme was promoted in the month of March this year. We did an initial round of sensitization. We sort of disseminated adequate information about this scheme through our websites, through media coverage, repeat insertions, etc. Then we also reached out through the Indian Maritime University and its affiliated institutions, to whom incidentally this is currently confined to. The benefit of the scheme is largely restricted at this point in time to the IMU and its affiliated colleges. And this covers those cadets and trainees, both on the nautical, that is the deck, and the engine side, who emerged from the IMU and its affiliated colleges in the years 2010, 2011 and 2012. Now these boys and girls are entitled to avail the benefits of this schematic framework, and when in the initial round, the initial tranche, we received about 297 odd applications, which we got vetted from the IMU, and eventually it turned out that about only 194 qualified, in as much as several of them, rest of them had probably not completed their first and second semester of the DNS, and hence were not eligible for going on to their sea time. Now we then decided that we would conduct we then tied up with the foreign ship owners and ship managers and agents, because what we found empirically through our various dialogues and engagements, that the Indian flag shipping industry was unable to provide any significant numbers of slots, because I think they had a saturation of capacity and they did not have any residual capacity to offer for these trainings. So then we had to tap into the foreign flags ships through the foreign flag owners and managers and their associations such as FOSMA and MASA in India. Yes, they came forward and offered us about 118 slots through 9 of their member constituent shipping companies. So this was encouraging enough, so we launched the first round in the month of May. It was decided that while the financial benefits was entirely up to the trainee But then we tied up with the Syndicate Bank, which is the accredited banker of the DG Shipping and the Ministry of Shipping, as also with the Indian Banks Association. They came forward and offered their fulsome support for this. We then decided, I mean, at the instance of FOSMA MASA, that they would be keen to have these boys undergo an orientation, a structured orientation course, which they would run. We organized a venue for that at our own funding for about a week, and there was a selection process which was held in the month of May. Unfortunately, at that stage, while 194 were eligible, despite our repeated pleas, we reached out in terms of communicating through mails, telephonic contacts repeatedly, and urged these boys to come forward and avail the benefit of the scheme. Only about 41 of them eventually turned up at the Maritime Training Institute of the Shipping Corporation of India, where we ran this 1 week orientation program. And this was a completely free of cost training program. And even the stay, bed and board was completely taken care of by the government. So this was the training orientation was provided in terms of content approved by the DG Shipping, by FOSMA and MASA, by their faculty. And eventually they were put through the rigors of a selection test, because at the end of the day, I think, considering that these boys are to be put on board vessels, and the fact that they were coming out of these institutions 3 to 5 years down the line after a time lag, it was felt that they needed to go through a selection process after an orientation or an induction training program. 34 of these boys sat through this, and unfortunately only about 7 qualified eventually through the merit process of the FOSMA and MASA. Now those 7 boys are now at various stages of being put on board. I believe 2 of them have already gone on board foreign flag ships. The rest are awaiting the ships to be made available to them, which I believe is going to happen sometime very, very soon. The other difficulty which arose, that quite a few of these boys who were left out, unfortunately they were not able to pick up the financial assistance because they already had a backlog of a loan outstanding, which they had availed when they had first got into the DNS program. Incidentally, 99% of the boys who applied and were picked up turned out coincidentally to be DNS cadets. So they had availed loans from banks and financial institutions at different points in time earlier on, and for various reasons they were unable to repay that loan, even partly, or some of them even in total. As a result, there was this baggage, and as a result, through when their names were run past by the Indian Banks Association, by the Syndicate Bank, it was found that in the Credit Information Bureau of India Limited database, which every bank runs past every application for financial assistance, they found that there was a red flag and these people had not paid up. So then that's how they were sort of, they were left out of the fray, as it were. We are now launching, despite the initial response, we feel that there is indeed space for us to go ahead with this. We are now very shortly in the process of relaunching a second tranche of this, and we hope to carry this process forward, learning from the past lessons and trying and enthusing and motivating through a far more robust outreach program on our part.
Right, sir. Yeah. Right, sir. We sincerely hope that cadets are listening to this and they will take advantage.
I hope so,
sir.
Yes.
Sir, there is a very ambitious actually a plan, or I should say that actually we want to increase the number of Indian seafarers in the global domain. Today we stand only approximately at 7%, and there is no confirmed data, it's only an estimate. Any comments from you, sir, that how we are going to increase the number of seafarers from India, our percentage in the global domain?
As things stand today, India is a critical player on the seafaring supply manpower side. In fact, we stand on a global footing at number 2 position, next only to Philippines, which is reportedly having a share of about 25% of the global seafarers. We are occupying a second slot at about 7.6%, of which about 6.9% are officers and about 7.7% are the ratings. In terms of our officers, I believe we are second to none. Probably we are the most coveted, most sought after cadre. that is essentially a tribute to the skill sets which our officers bring to bear, and pretty much the same also hold goods for our rating. The Government of India, in terms of its national maritime agenda for the decade 2010-20, bids fair to enhance this contribution and our share of the global manpower seafarers supply to about 9% by the year 2020. And we believe, considering that we are already at about 7.6%, we are fairly confident that we should be able to scale up and reach the target of 9% in the next 5 years or so that we have ahead of us. And we plan to do so through a very concerted effort where we will engage the industry as the eventual stakeholders and prospective employers, the maritime training institutions, various associations, and the maritime administration. We would like to engage them on a constant process as to how do we retain not only our quantitative edge, but also more importantly the qualitative nuance which has now enabled India to retain its share thus far.
My next question is actually coming to that only, sir. That there is a general feeling in the industry that many training institutes are not producing quality seafarers.
Well, the jury is still out on this. This is a debatable proposition. The fact remains that statistically we have about 134 maritime training institutions approved by the Directorate General of Shipping over the last several years. And you would be aware that since 1997, the maritime education space has been opened up, has been privatized,
Yes, sir.
and the numbers of these entities have risen exponentially. This was particularly true when the going was extremely good for the industry until the global recession hit in the year 2008. We have about 134 maritime training institutions, of which approximately 84 are pre-sea maritime training institutions, and the remaining 50 do the other post-sea competence and other modular courses, etc. Now, these maritime training institutions are subject to various procedures of due diligence from time to time, such as inspections, including surprise inspections, and there are observations which come about. Then they are brought to the notice of these entities, and they are expected to pull up their socks and measure up to the standards which are set for them. A very recent novel initiative which this office, the Directorate General of Shipping, has launched, and which has stabilized and has been extremely well received, I must share with you happily, is the CIP program, the Comprehensive Inspection Program.
Yes, sir.
Now, this began with the pre-sea training institutions, and now it has been expanded mandatorily for the post-sea MTIs as well. Now, what this paradigm seeks to do is to evaluate through a third party on an autonomous basis, driven by authorization given by the Directorate General of Shipping to the classification societies or the recognized organizations from any one amongst the 13 I.R.S international classification societies, where Association of Classification Societies, where they were authorized to carry out a due diligence inspection in terms of various parameters which have been set. At the end of the day, the effort is to identify as to how robust or otherwise these institutions have been and have emerged till date. There are various gradations from A plus to down to in the order of the matrix.
Yes,
we are happy to state that after some initial resistance, most of these maritime training institutions see merit and value in this proposition. So they have gone in for it on a very voluntary basis, and the numbers are only on the rise. About, I think off the cuff, if I recall correctly, about 67 pre-sea institutions have already gone in for it so far. And we believe that this will also send the right message across to prospective students and their parents and the well-wishers, inasmuch as this is all put out in the public domain. It's there in the websites of the DG Shipping, as for them to see as to where each of these MTIs stands vis-a-vis the parameters, the rigorous parameters that are set, and then they can evaluate it and take a calibrated call as to whether they would like to go for institution A or institution B, or for program A or program B. That is best left to the discretion or the call of the individual prospective student to do so. So we believe that this process will induce a certain amount of sobering or chastening influence, as it were, and which should hopefully try and reform the education process down the line. But I clearly concede that much more can be done and should be done. And that's something which we are now deliberating, and we are in the process of engaging various stakeholders, including the MTIs, to see how we can look at, introspect and look at various other facets of maritime training education and see that we do not slip up anywhere vis-a-vis the STCW convention requirements.
Yes, sir.
Retaining that as a minimum threshold, the STCW 2010 and the rules which we have now notified as of 2014. Our endeavor is to see that not only we do not slip down below our contribution of 7.6, but on the contrary, we are able to scale it up perhaps into 2-digit numbers in about another 4 to 5 years down the line.
That's very encouraging to hear, sir.
Yeah.
So there's another actually concern, and that is about the huge shortage of senior officers from India, particularly the engineers. Many believe actually it is the examination system probably. There's something to be like, more streamlining is needed for that. We would like to have your comments on that, sir.
Well,
The time that it takes actually, by the time the Indian engineers or officers actually they pass and they report back in their companies.
okay. Now, this is an issue which has been voiced as a matter of concern in the recent past by the Indian National Ship Owners Association in particular.
Yes, sir.
We are completely cognizant of that. We've had one round of dialogue with them, and we are in continuous engagement with them as to how do we resolve this. Off the cuff, I mean, if I were to put out some numbers, when we sat with them, we actually were able to demonstrate that in terms of the outturn of, let's say, the chief engineers and the like, which was a particular critical concern,
Yes, sir.
that the numbers emerging are pretty much on a ratio 1:3 vis-a-vis the actual requirements on board. Given the attrition rate and the fact that normally there is, there is always a fact that there is on hire, off hire, etc.
Yes,
So typically we believe, and this is the industry norm, and I'm subject to correction here, that if you're able to churn out 3 times the numbers of the actual requirements at a given point in time, so generally we found that we are able to outturn about 1100 to 1200 chief engineer grade officers. The requirements being, if you look at the number of Indian flag foreign going ships, and this concern is primarily only for ocean going, not so much for coastal trade.
Yes, sir.
Today our Indian flag fleet strength is on the ocean going side is approximately 370 vessels. And if you look at 1,200 chief engineers being graded and certified as in terms of COCs, we believe the numbers are on a ratio 1:3, which is relatively comfortable. But we see that there is some issue and there is some merit in what the industry is saying. Unless you would wish to come in, I mean.
Yes, with your permission. Actually,
Please.
It's not only about INSA, but we have so many management companies, third-party management companies which are operating actually in India and also
Yep.
from other parts of the world, and they source actually their engineers and officers from India.
Yep.
So actual requirement is actually far more than what we actually see. But when we actually, if you see requirement for chief engineers or advertisements for that, it is massive actually. In the magazines we can
Yeah.
see in the Seafarers
So
Club.
we are now right now looking as to whether we can do something more or rather incrementally
Yes, sir.
in terms of our COC exam patterns, both on the written as well as the oral side. Now you must understand that typically it is left to the discretion of a candidate to decide as to the number of attempts he or she wishes to take.
Yes, sir.
Generally it has been observed that some candidates appear for their writtens, not all of it together. They take
Yes, sir.
certain parts when depending upon their convenience. Then they wish to stagger this over a period of time, over a number of attempts. And it's not often that they take both the writtens and the orals at the same time. So there is this built-in lag in the way the candidates appear as well. So there is 2 sides to this coin, but that said, we very humbly accept the fact that there is something which needs to be done about it. We are at this point seriously looking at it, and we hope in the next 2 to 3 months we should be satisfactorily be able to resolve this going forward. So at this point I would not like to spell out completely all the details because this is still a work in progress.
Right, sir.
This is a matter of continuing engagement with the stakeholders, and we hope that by November or December latest, I think we would have turned the tide and probably be able to service almost all the requirements of not only Indian flagships and also appropriately, as you said, all the others who source the foreign flag ship owners and managers who source technical manpower from India, the crewing manpower from India.
Sir, it is in our knowledge that DG Shipping and also the Ministry of Shipping has been doing a lot of they have been running welfare schemes for the seafarers, and a lot has been done also as far as the families which are affected by the piracy attacks and all. We would like to hear from you, sir.
The welfare schemes are administered through the Seamen's Welfare Fund Society.
Yes, sir.
They typically have three schemes. One is monthly ex gratia monetary assistance scheme, which of course is a very, very modest amount, I must say it. Then there is another theme for for maternity benefit. Then there is post-death benefit available for widows, etc. So those are available on the website of the Seafarers Welfare Fund Society as well as on the DG Shipping side. I need not get into details.
Yes, sir. Yes,
but the specifics of the other issue that you flagged, I think that is something which we would like to share again with utmost humility. On the anti-piracy front, when Somali piracy, that is piracy of the coastal Somalia or the Gulf of Aden or the Horn of Africa, was at its peak in the period surging from 2008 till about middle of 2012, Indian seafarers, given the sheer numbers who are on board various vessels and transiting on the east-west corridor, they were probably the largest impacted by Somali piracy, and those are borne out in terms of numbers. Statistically, if you look, approximately 5,400 seafarers of various diverse nationalities were hijacked along with their ships at different points in time during this period of about 4 odd years. And there was complete mayhem. I mean, I recall that in 2008 till about 2011, there used to be an average of about 2 hijacks per month. And the detention periods, the periods of custody by Somali pirates of seafarers was anywhere from a couple of months to about a year plus before they were eventually released on payment of ransom. Of these 5,400 Indian overall global national seafarers, as many as 343 were Indians alone.
Yes, sir.
Evidently, the note of caution is that this is not at a single point in time. These are all captured over a period of time across these 4.5 years. So clearly that was a serious concern for the Government of India, because in terms of a constituency, we were the largest nationality impacted, and they were of various grades, officers as well as ABs and ratings. Fortunately for us, as things have played out over the period of time, 340 out of the 343 have come back safely on their release. Admittedly, some of them, as traumatically long as 4 years plus. The unfortunate 3 instances where we have lost out despite best efforts are 2 of the 2 Indian seafarers who lost their lives on board the ships. Again, for reasons I would not like to get into. One was shot dead in cold blood. One apparently died of natural causes during his captivity. And the third case is of a very unfortunate incident where an Indian seafarer, Dheeraj Tiwari, is missing since the 8th of September 2011 on board his ship from a vessel called MV Iceberg 1. This is despite the fact that the vessel stands released and all his remaining 22 co-seafarers have come back home. Now, when this piracy paradigm was at its peak, including what happened subsequently in 2013 for about a year and a half until the first half of 2014, also in the Gulf of Guinea, in the West African waters, particularly in Nigeria and the like, where initially the perception that it was only of armed robbery, but then it assumed a dangerous overtone of being piracy beyond the territorial waters and detentions and hijacks for release on payment of ransom. Now, during this period, the Government of India was extremely sensitive and extremely responsible to the overall interests of ensuring the safe and secure release of these seafarers, and at the same time, the fact that something had to be done in terms of outreach to the families of the seafarers during the period of their captivity and even beyond. So I'm happy to say again with utmost modesty that through a very calibrated and nuanced outreach program, the Government of India reached out. On the one hand, of course, there were continual efforts through international fora and international players, primarily through engagement with various stakeholders for the release, and which has eventually culminated in this. And I must put a qualifier here that at no point in time the Government of India was in direct engagement at all with the captors, that is the pirates, because it's a very stated policy of the government that there shall be no negotiating with these lawless elements, these criminal elements, and there was no question of payment of ransom. That is obviously the avowed stated policy of the government, and that we have stuck to it. But that said, the efforts were on through various other diplomatic and back channel track to sources to try and get the release. And that has culminated eventually in this happy situation where after November 3rd, 2014, there's not a single Indian seafarer who is in custody as of today, although there's about, unfortunately, 26 seafarers of various nationalities still are captive in Somalia as on date. And I must add here that mercifully, and again touch wood, not a single Indian flag vessel has ever been hijacked so far. All these Indian seafarers were on board foreign flag merchant ships. Now, apart from these efforts made, the Government of India also released in some specific cases where there was genuine distress of the seafarers and their families, ex gratia payments of what we call as solatium. So ranging from around 2.5 lakh to about 11 lakh rupees in more than one tranche in 3 or 4 odd cases. So this was financial assistance, one-time ex gratia relief that was to essentially keep the fires burning at home in the absence of the breadwinner who was in captivity in Somali pirate custody at that point in time. So that was another step that we took. Apart from it, what we did is during the period of captivity of these men, we also reached out to the families. There was continual engagement. I was in regular contact with most of the families personally, on telephone, through emails, or we used to call them over and have debrief sessions and also psychological counseling through professional psychiatrists, which we did. We also then we realized that something had to be done much more substantively. So we were able to identify at least 2 spouses, 2 wives of the seafarers who were then in captivity, and both coincidentally happened to be of one ship called as MV Asphalt Venture, where they were qualified teachers by academic profession. And so then I personally took upon myself to get them employment, contractual employment, for about 2 consecutive years, when I took it up directly and personally at my level by meeting the Commissioner of the Kendriya Vidyalaya Sangatanam under the Ministry of HRD of the Government of India in Delhi. So those 2 personal meetings of mine and then my demi-official writing led to the engagement of these 2 spouses, one each in Visakhapatnam and in Cochin. And it's only now that they have moved on, because by then now their spouses have come back, so they're able to get back to their feet. Concurrently, what we did is that we found that the wards of 2 of these seafarers, and again coincidentally turns out purely through coincidence, not by design, of Asphalt Venture seafarers, 2 of their children, 2 sons, they were studying in maritime training institutions, one each in Manet in Pune, another Naval Architecture College in Cochin. So I personally spoke to the principals of each of these 2 institutions, and in Manet I had met him and the management, and at our appeal they were very kind enough to waive a very, very substantive portion of their fee for all the 8 semesters, the residual 8 odd semesters of the 4-year programs. In fact, the relief in the case of Manet, I must give credit to the managements and the principals that they responded responsibly to our clarion call. In the Manet, the boy was otherwise paying approximately about 1.23 lakh per semester. As much as 95,000 of that was waived completely, and all that remained was the 28,000 which had to be paid to the Mumbai University, to which the college is affiliated. And since that was a statutory due to the university, that they were in no position to waive. But otherwise, whatever is the 95,000 payable to the college, that was completely waived across till the time he completes his course. Similarly, the boy in the case of Cochin, there again, I think as against 2.13, something like around 1.2 lakh was waived. So fairly significant relief was afforded to those 2 families. That apart, I reached out to the sister of one of those boys, a boy called Daniston Litton, again in Asphalt Venture. She wanted a job, so I spoke to the chairman of the Chidambaram Port Trust in Tuticorin, and through him, in a private through him, we were able to get a private job, a contractual job for this girl. She continues to work in Tuticorin. So these are small, extremely modest steps, and we were there whenever the families wanted us in terms of counseling. It was a very traumatic experience for us also to convince them because during the period of prolonged captivity,
Yes, sir.
it took a lot of convincing for the families that we really meant well and that we were credible and that we were not sort of misleading them. And I'm happy to say eventually, I think they've recognized this, and I must share it with utmost modesty again that in the month of May 2014, in a meeting that was probably the 16th plenary session of the Contact Group on Piracy of the Coast of Somalia, held in the United Nations at New York, which I had attended as an official delegate of the Government of India, India was applauded as having had the best response mechanism for seafarers anywhere in the world affected by Somali piracy, in terms of its sensitivity and in terms of its substantive content of outreach. So we were applauded, this was recorded in the communique, and so that is, we were deemed to be the best in class in terms of our treatment of seafarers. So that is where we stand.
Sir, thank you very much,
Not at
and I'm sure the viewers will see that there has been a lot of activity from the Director of Shipping, from the Ministry of Shipping, and you can send us your feedback and we will try our best to take it back to
Thank you.
Shri Deepak Shetty, sir.
Thank you.